You know, the book of Revelations is probably one of the most disturbing books for most Christians, and probably the hardest one to decipher. The vision of John in it and the prophecies thereof, a lot of people have a hard time, even when they think that they see, they clearly don't see. I know ever since I can remember, I have always watched as Christians try to point to kingdoms all over the earth, making them try to match Revelations instead of understanding Revelations and letting Revelations reveal itself. They try to make everything the mark of the beast. I remember back when I was young, and people, the younger generation may not can relate, but those my age and older can, when they first started doing barcodes. Because back when I was young, the grocer looked at the price and put the price into the old, cash registers, and it was like basically a giant adding machine with a drawer is what it was. And you didn't have the ability of the machine telling you how much change to get back. You actually had to learn how to give change back, to the customer so that they could clearly see you didn't cheat them with the change. And then when barcodes came along, it made it easier, where they just scanned, which they use to this day. They would scan it and it would pop up into the machine. And back when that technology came, everyone started saying, oh yeah, this is how they're going to give you the mark of the beast. This is where the mark of the beast is going to come. And every technology since then, the church tries to figure out how to make that technology match prophecies and the book of Revelations. And they do the same thing with kingdoms on this earth, not realizing that because they didn't read it line upon line, and learn it precept upon precept, precept upon precept, it is why they are always wrong. I remember back when, I think it was Iraq, perhaps, or they were like, oh yeah, Saddam Hussein is he's going to build the kingdom of Babylon, and that makes us closer to the end times and the book of Revelations. And no, when they were teaching that, I knew immediately that it was wrong, because I had read it line upon line. And when Father destroyed Babylon, he said out of his mouth that no longer would Babylon, the kingdom of Babylon, be reestablished or raised back up on this earth. That's what he said. So when I got to Revelations and I was reading and seeing Babylon the Great on the forehead of the great whore, I knew it was not talking about a physical kingdom. I knew immediately it was talking about a spiritual kingdom. It is not a physical kingdom. And there are many, many things like this in prophecy and Revelations that we don't realize. Especially Revelations. It's the prophecy of the spiritual things more than it is the physical things. Revelations has a trick to it. And once you learn the trick, things will open up in Revelations to you. But you cannot understand Revelations without reading line upon line, line upon line, and understanding precept upon precept, precept upon precept. It's why so many people are so blinded by Revelations. They don't understand that they actually need King Solomon to understand Revelations. And everyone rejects King Solomon because he built temples to other gods for his wives. But they forget that King Solomon is the only person in the scriptures that had the actual wisdom of the Most High. And it is through his writings that will help you to understand some of the concepts of the book of Revelations. King Solomon, in his writings, he wrote the Proverbs. And a lot of people just look at Proverbs as cute, quirky little sayings. But there's something greater in Proverbs. King Solomon wrote Proverbs, and then he mixed Proverbs up. And when you read it line upon line, as soon as you get into Proverbs, the first thought that should go through your head is, why is this mixed up like this? I, of course, having the eye of a seer, that was the first thing I thought. Why is it mixed up? Why is there no real narrative to it? And then I realized that there was a narrative. It's just that the narrative was mixed up, rearranged, pulled out of context. And when you understand that, it opens your eyes to wisdom. Because King Solomon had the wisdom of the Most High. And it helps you understand that in Revelations, Revelations is basically giving you a series of events. But those series of events have been mixed up. But those series of events are also reiterated over and over again from different perspectives, to help those with eyes to see the different perspectives and the different series of events that must come to pass. And you're able to understand that Revelations is actually a parable. It is a parable that the Most High gave to John. And it is hard to understand this parable, or this revelation that was given to John, without reading line upon line, line upon line, and learning precept upon precept. So some things that I see and may show you, you may not understand because you didn't read and do the first obedience to the Most High concerning the Scriptures. You allowed others to paint the picture of what righteousness is by them mixing up scriptures and pulling it together to make a narrative for themselves or for whatever the narrative they are trying to focus on. Revelations is a very, very, from my eyes, from seeing it, it's very specific. It's very purposeful. It opens right up to me. For instance, when it talks about the kingdom that in the spirit is Sodom and Egypt, or Babylon, Egypt. You have to understand Egypt before you can understand that prophecy. You have to understand Babel before you can understand that prophecy. You have to truly understand Sodom before you can understand that prophecy. And it uses the word the spirit of Egypt, the spirit of Sodom, the spirit of Babel, letting you know it's a spiritual kingdom. It's not a physical kingdom that it is speaking of. So then you have to look, and I think that the reason a lot of people see it as physical kingdoms is because of how it begins. It begins with 7 churches, with 7 candlesticks, 7 spirits. And even though we perceive the 7 churches as physical kingdoms, it's actually not. It's actually speaking of the spiritual churches, the spiritual kingdoms. And I see why there's so much confusion. But if you pay close attention, Revelation starts with the 7 churches. It begins letting you know that the narrative henceforth is going to be dealing a lot with those 7 spiritual kingdoms. And if you look closer and pay closer attention, this isn't the first time in the book that the 7 churches are pointed to. They're pointed to with different imagery. And it's why a lot of times you cannot see, and you're so blinded by the kingdom of the end times, the kingdoms of Revelations. And as time progresses, I am going to attempt to help guide you so that you can see these kingdoms more clearly. Just as the angel is constantly showing him spiritual kingdoms, the spiritual Jerusalem that comes out of the sky. It's a very spiritual book, though we cannot see it. So many things in Revelations will open up to you if you only read it line upon line, line upon line, and understand it precept upon precept, precept upon precept. More prophecies will open up to you. There are so many things that opened up to me, that opened my eyes because I learned it that way. Because I read it line upon line, line upon line. And I asked every question. I asked Father to go through it with me, and I asked every question. No matter how bizarre or crazy the question may seem to you, it's still a valid question to help you understand. It is the first step to opening up your relationship with our Father who is in heaven, who is the King of the universe, who is the living Yahweh.